You're poor, and you're not embarrassed to come to the bank.
As I was leaving the bank after finishing my business, a newcomer spat out at me. Ignoring him seemed to irritate him further, and he started to say something outrageous.
Planning to run away? Then don't ever come back. Poor folks should just stash their cash under the mattress.
If that's how it's going to be, I'll do as he wishes. As you say, I am poor, so I will no longer use this bank. My name is John. I run a factory inherited from my father. Now 63, I still feel young at heart, though I'm more of an analog person and not great with machines. That's why I've completely handed over computer-related tasks to my son. Why don't you hand it over to your son and retire? My wife also suggests, but as long as my body can work, I want to work. It's not that I don't trust my son. Right after graduating from college, he started working at this factory, gaining experience and earning the trust of the other employees. But I just love to work. Working in this industry, we're sometimes looked down upon just for being a factory. Sure, most of our work is subcontracting, and in terms of visibility, we're worlds apart from companies you see on TV. But there are benefits to being a small company. For example, we all nurture newcomers together, and the employees are like family. It's the warmth that comes from being able to sit down and talk with everyone. As I've gotten older, I've come to feel that more strongly. Ever since I was little, my father, Tom, kept saying I would take over as president someday. As a child, I was proud to follow in his footsteps, but as I grew up, it felt more like pressure, and my teenage years were full of rebellion against him.
Study properly. You won't be able to carry on the company like that.
I was always scolded by my father, since I didn't like studying much.
I'm sick of a life decided by you. I'll decide my own life.
With that, I got a job at a different company and left home. Since then, I hardly visited my parents' house, and the relationship with my father was strained. It was about 10 years after leaving home that the relationship with him began to improve. Deciding to get married, I returned home for the first time in a long while to introduce my fiancé. As I hadn't seen him in a long time, he seemed much older. Until then, I had thought of my father as being eternal, unchanging. It's natural for him to age as I do, but I remember being shocked by that realization. Persuaded by my wife, I returned home to work at his company, starting from scratch, just like any other new employee. Recognized by my seniors and my father, I took over as president at the age of 40. It's been over 20 years since then. Though we've had tough times with the economic fluctuations, we've managed to get through by sticking together. There's a major bank branch near the factory, which is convenient and where I always go. It can get a bit crowded, but the bank staff service is always courteous and pleasant. But things changed a bit this year. Among the new recruits this year, there was one with a bad attitude. His name is Ryan. I had dealt with him before when I used the bank. One day, I went to the bank to withdraw $300. He was polite and friendly, and despite being young, he seemed competent, handling his tasks efficiently without keeping customers waiting.
Thank you for waiting. What can I do for you today?
I'd like to withdraw $300, please. After I handed over my bank book, he made an obviously annoyed face.
Just $300.
Yes, $300 is fine.
I'll call your number, so please wait in the seating area.
Though he seemed polite, as I was returning to the waiting area, I heard Ryan mutter under his breath.
Just $300, pathetic.
He must have thought he was speaking quietly enough not to be heard, but I have good hearing. However, I didn't want to make a fuss over such a minor thing and be labeled a complainer, so I pretended not to hear it.
Number 48, your transaction is ready.
I was called to the counter soon after. He appeared to be acting normally, but as I was about to take the money and leave, I heard him mutter again.
Don't come back, poor guy.
I was quite upset, but I decided to just leave the bank. After that, I used the bank several times, and Ryan happened to be my teller. He seemed displeased with me, only making small transactions, and his service became sloppy, adopting a disdainful attitude. Every month, the day before payday, I go to the bank to make deposits. Since we have a small number of employees, that's been sufficient, and I use the bank near the factory for this purpose. Normally, I'd go first thing in the morning or change during lunch break, but today, with a deadline approaching and no time to spare, I thought the bank being so close, I could just go in my work clothes. The bank was just around the corner, so I figured it would be fine as is and headed to the bank in my work clothes from the factory. Today it was quite crowded, and it looked like there would be a long wait. I just wanted to finish up smoothly and get back to help with the work. While waiting for my turn, about 15 minutes later, it was finally my turn. Looking at the counter, the teller was Ryan, of all people. Of all days, it had to be today. Ryan glanced at my clothes and made an obviously displeased face.
Wearing dirty clothes in here.
I'm already used to Ryan's verbal abuse by now. Not wanting to waste time engaging, I pretended not to hear and took out the deposit slip. I need to make a deposit. Sorry for the large amount, I said, handing over the deposit slip. But he didn't take it.
Seems like you didn't hear me, so I'll make it clear. This place isn't for poor people like you. Do you understand?
I've been using this bank for many years, and there's no minimum amount for deposits. Besides, I am the president of a company, so I certainly earn more than a new employee. What's the idea trying to drive away a customer?
People like you, dressed in dirty clothes, just being here damages our bank's image. It's really quite a nuisance.
Ryan said, sighing exaggeratedly. Sure, these work clothes are quite worn, but not to the extent that they damage the bank's image. I'm sorry, but I'm in a hurry today. Can we make this quick? When I responded calmly, it seemed to irritate him.
I'm telling you to leave. Didn't you hear me? Always coming to the counter for such small amounts. Stop wasting our time. Unlike you, I'm not idle.
His words were infuriating, but I had to make the deposit today. The salaries have to be available for withdrawal by 10 a.m. That's the guideline we're given. It's not legally required to be by 10 a.m., and it wouldn't be a problem if it's later on the same day, but it would inconvenience the employees. Is that so? Understood. Hesitating on what to do next, I decided to wait in line again and get someone else to handle it. It took longer than planned, but continuing to deal with Ryan, would be a waste of time. If it was going to take time anyway, better to avoid his rude remarks. Reluctantly, I waited in line again. It seemed the peak had passed, and there were fewer people waiting than before. While waiting in the seating area, I saw Ryan being called over by his supervisor. Getting a lecture, maybe, I thought, and in about 5 minutes, it was my turn, but this time, I was called to a different teller. Without mentioning my attire, they smoothly accepted the deposit slip. Finally, having completed my task, I was about to return to the factory when Ryan stopped me outside the bank.
Wait a minute.
Just when I thought I could finally leave, I wondered what he wanted. Moreover, his polite speech had completely disappeared, now speaking informally. This isn't how you talk to a customer. What is it? I finished my business and was about to leave.
You just said, "What is it?" to me. I get scolded because of you. Don't mess with me.
The scolding he received earlier was probably about his attitude. But this is a ridiculous accusation. It's his lack of professional manners that's the problem, not anything else. He was probably told to apologize, but instead of doing so, he's lashing out. If you get scolded, it's not my fault. Other staff treated me just fine. You're the one at fault for trying to kick me out with your arbitrary logic.
It's your fault for coming to the bank even though you're poor. I was just kindly telling you that you're out of place. You insisted on staying, and that's why I get scolded.
He clearly has no intention of listening. I'm glad we don't have anyone like him among our younger employees. Am I not allowed to come to the bank because I'm poor? There's no such rule, right?
It's not about rules. Aren't you embarrassed to come here?
I've never thought it embarrassing to go to the bank. It's a place I use because I need to, nothing more. Do people really worry about appearances in such places? Do you worry about how you're seen by others when you go to the bank? That sounds like a hassle.
I'm not poor like you. I don't wear shabby clothes even when I'm just stepping out.
I couldn't help but retort. To get back quickly, I decided to ignore whatever else he said. Is that so? I'm in a hurry, so I'll be going now.
Planning to run away? Then don't ever come back. Poor folks should just keep their money under the mattress.
For a moment, I was dumbfounded by his words. Mattress banking, as if I could store the important company funds like that. It contains the employees' salaries. I had trusted this place to keep it safe. But well, if that's how far he's going to go, I might as well do as he wishes. Is that so? Understood. As you say, I am poor, so I will no longer use this bank. Ryan seemed taken aback by my smooth retreat. He probably thought I would argue back and was ready to use that as an outlet for his stress. I'll come back another day to close the account. With that, I returned to the factory. After successfully meeting the deadline and when things had calmed down, I was at another bank, opening a new account. It's a bit farther from both my home and factory than the current one, making it slightly inconvenient. But I chose this bank because I heard I could use ATM services at convenience stores and handle payroll transactions online. I'm not great with the internet, but my son has taught me a lot, and I indeed find it convenient. After opening the new account, I headed to the bank near the factory I always used. My goal today was to transfer all the money to the new account and close the old one. This way, I truly wouldn't need to come to this bank again. The bank was not busy today, and it was my turn quickly.
What can I do for you?
I want to transfer the entire balance of $350 million from this account to another one.
$350 million. Excuse me, but is there any chance this could be a scam?
The bank clerk seemed bewildered by the large sum. It's fine. I've opened a new corporate account at another bank, so I came to close this account.
Just a moment, please. I'll call the branch manager.
The clerk hurriedly went to the back. Guided by the returning clerk, I was led to a partition booth.
Sorry for the wait. I'm Anderson, the branch manager. May I ask why you're closing your account?
I've opened an account at a bank near the station, so I plan to use that as my main bank from now on. Therefore, I won't be using this bank anymore and would like to close my account. Mentioning the rival bank, Anderson looked panicked.
But that's a bit far, isn't it? Considering your factory's location, our bank would be more convenient.
The distance is farther, but I've made arrangements to operate online, so there's no need to worry. Anderson tried to convince me with various benefits, but I had no intention of agreeing.
Is there a specific reason why our bank won't do?
There's a young banker here named Ryan. He told me poor people shouldn't come to the bank and should just keep their money under the mattress. So I decided to close my account to avoid coming here.
What? Ryan said that. I'm terribly sorry.
Anderson was mortified and repeatedly apologized. I've been using this bank for years and always found the service courteous and pleasant. I don't think everyone at this bank shares his views, but his actions were too much. Anderson said he would call Ryan over, and soon Ryan was brought in, looking dragged.
You've been quite rude. What were you thinking, speaking to our customer like that?
Under Anderson's stern questioning, Ryan stumbled over his words.
But I've dealt with this person several times, and he always uses only a little money. It's a nuisance when we're busy.
Anderson was exasperated by Ryan's reasoning.
How can you say such things to our customer? Judging people by the amount of money they use is not fitting for a banker.
Ryan seemed taken aback by Anderson's strong words.
What you did was wrong, and it can't be undone. But what's important is what you do next. Apologize properly to John. I'll apologize with you.
Anderson, now speaking in a calmer tone, urged Ryan to apologize. But, pride wounded after being scolded by his supervisor, Ryan became defiant.
I haven't done anything that requires an apology. I just said it was a nuisance because it is. I'm just stating facts. Even Anderson must think it's a waste of time to be bothered with small matters.
I taught you to treat every customer with importance, no matter how small the matter. I instructed you to handle each task with care. It's the accumulation of these small efforts that builds a good bank.
Anderson's tone remained calm, but his disappointment was clear.
I'm sorry my training did not prevent you from experiencing discomfort. I truly apologize.
No, I understand your words were sincere, as I've been a regular customer. As someone who also manages employees, I felt a bit of sympathy for Anderson. No matter how well you teach, if the person isn't willing to learn, it doesn't mean anything.
It helps a little to hear you say that. I'll take care of the cancellation process for you.
What? You're really going to cancel? Why is Anderson bowing down to someone like this? He's not even going to be our customer anymore. There's no point in sucking up.
Ryan reacted to the mention of cancellation. Thinking about it, his attitude of pandering makes sense given his excessively rude behavior up until now.
Being cancelled by someone like him doesn't hurt or itch me. It's lucky to have less useless work. Efficiency is important, as Anderson always says. I haven't done anything wrong, right?
We were dumbfounded by Ryan's blatant defiance.
Someone like him. You don't understand what kind of person John is, do you?
I understand perfectly. A poor person who doesn't deposit much money, but has the leisure to come to the bank.
Ryan said, laughing outright.
You don't understand at all. John runs a factory and has been managing a corporate account with us, depositing hundreds of billions. You chased him away when he tried to transfer from the corporate account.
Wait, but he always.
When you were in charge, it was for his private matters. There's a separate savings account, so that account doesn't have much in it. He was chased away by you the last time he tried to make a transfer. I even have proof, showing Ryan the passbook. Ryan, who had assumed I was poor, started panicking, realizing he was about to lose a major client because of his actions.
If I knew, I wouldn't have done that. Why didn't you tell me, Anderson?
I did tell you during your initial training, and I've been saying every day to treat all customers with courtesy.
Ryan tried to shift the blame, but it was clearly his own fault.
Please, I apologize, don't cancel. I'm truly sorry. I'll be sure to be more polite from now on.
Though he apologized, it was clear it was just superficial. Apologies now won't make me cancel the cancellation. How can I trust someone who judges and looks down on people based on whether they have money?
I'm truly sorry. I really am reflecting on my actions.
No matter how much he apologized, his words felt empty. If you had said that as soon as you came in, things might have been different. But it's too late for apologies now. It's no one's fault but your own that it's come to this.
Just because I'm apologizing, you think you can look down on me.
His momentary show of humility quickly faded, revealing his true feelings again. Ryan's face was openly sullen.
If you don't shape up, we might have to consider letting you go.
Anderson raised his voice.
Are you threatening me? I'll report this to the headquarters. I'm being bullied by Anderson.
Thinking he had no chance of winning against me, Ryan started to attack Anderson. Perhaps he was hoping to obscure his own responsibility for the cancellation.
You're free to report whatever you want about me to the headquarters. I have nothing to hide, and I will ensure you are dealt with appropriately.
Don't mess with me. I've done nothing wrong. I am.
Ryan kept insisting he was not at fault and acted like a petulant child unwilling to listen. He probably hasn't matured emotionally. That's exactly why you're not trustworthy. You're not really sorry. Don't think you can just smooth things over superficially. All you care about is avoiding responsibility. That hit home, and Ryan glared at me in silence. Because of your actions, the bank has lost $350 million. The branch manager was willing to apologize with you, and you wasted that. Even a newcomer should understand the gravity of their actions. Reflect on this properly from now on. Finally, Ryan had nothing to retort. He opened his mouth several times as if to say something, but no words came out. In the end, Anderson processed the cancellation, and I transferred the corporate account to another bank.
I truly apologize for this time and thank you for using our services over the years. If there's ever a chance, please consider using us again.
Anderson politely saw me out as I left the bank. Though I feel sorry for Anderson, I doubt I'll ever consider using this place again. Anderson had been generous in his response to Ryan's actions, considering Ryan was still in his first year, opting for a severe reprimand and a pay cut with the intention of retraining him from scratch. However, it seemed Ryan couldn't stand being scolded severely. He probably wasn't used to being reprimanded. Despite Anderson's kindness, Ryan wasted it, sulking and letting his work attitude deteriorate further. His colleagues looked at him coldly. He caused a major problem with his actions, yet showed no remorse and sulked instead. No one was willing to cover for such a person. Ryan seemed to have become isolated. Anderson had been willing to look after him until the end, but Ryan pushed him away. "It's your fault I'm in this situation," he lashed out, eventually quitting on his own by slamming down his resignation letter.
There are plenty of companies that want me.
He left with those parting words, but real life was not so easy. Ryan thought he would quickly find another job, but he was repeatedly rejected at the document screening stage, not even making it to an interview. He hadn't realized how harshly the world judges a newcomer who quits within a year. Unless it was due to illness, injury, or an exceptionally toxic workplace, quitting so soon is generally seen unfavorably, and Ryan's case was simply running away. Even if he managed to get to an interview, pausing would be difficult. Having been part of many interviews, I've seen a lot of people. Among them were young individuals who, like Ryan, quit their jobs shortly after starting. I've heard various reasons, including complaints about their previous companies and admissions of lacking patience. We've hired such young people if they seemed capable of continuing with us, but if I were the interviewer, I wouldn't choose Ryan. He hasn't shown remorse for his actions and would likely quit again if faced with similar circumstances. Experience teaches you to recognize such tendencies. Without a change in attitude, he won't find employment. After starting to use online banking with my son's support, I've become proficient in its use. Once accustomed, the convenience and time-saving aspect of not needing to physically go to a bank is significant. While I can forgive Ryan, this situation has been a good opportunity. As you age, there's a tendency to be resistant to new things. However, I now aim to be more open to adopting new technologies. Riding the wave of change like that, I want to work as long as possible.
How does it feel to become subordinate to your former peer? I got promoted, and you, being sent back to the US as a mere staff member after just 3 years in Germany, proves you were just dead weight, huh?
Every day, I'm met with such cold words from my female boss. It seems she's intent on painting me as the guy who can't do his job. Her task assignments are utterly unreasonable, clearly meant to harass me alone. But if that's what she wants, I've come to accept it. I couldn't see any other way to make it up to her. However, I was made to realize that this was a mistake by someone. Today, she brought in a heap of documents again.
Summarize these papers in under 2 hours. Fail, and you're fired.
Enough of this fruitless exchange. Just a sec. There, done.
What?
I'm Tom Jackson. Currently, I'm facing a dilemma at work. The company I joined operates globally in the tech sector. I'm currently at the headquarters in the US, but until a few months ago, I was working at the branch in Germany. Remembering the times spent with my colleagues in Germany, I already feel nostalgic. That was when I received the order to return to the US. Yes, thank you. I'll be taking my leave now. Exiting the branch manager's office, I head back to my own.
Hey, Tom. So the boss said, as expected, huh?
That was my colleague, Michael. The conversation was in German. Yay, just as everyone thought, I'm heading back to the US. Hearing this, other colleagues gather around.
What? So it was a transfer. Thought it might happen someday, but it's gonna be lonely without you.
Our go-to ace is leaving Germany. I'm worried about the future.
Well, Tom was here for that project. Now that it's done, the US needs him, I guess.
Here's to Tom's new beginning. Let's celebrate.
Moving from the US to Germany for work was a challenge. I wasn't very good at German, and of course, knew no one. The team at the German branch welcomed me warmly, helping me grow at an incredible pace to the point where they'd call me an ace. Though I'd never consider myself as such, I was honored and happy. Before returning to the US, my colleagues threw a farewell party. They love their parties, often throwing them for birthdays or project completions. I'm not great with alcohol, but just being in the atmosphere was more than enough fun. And that day, the mood was anything but somber, filled with good times.
Hey, Tom. Maria got cozy with you. But what's next?
Michael, more cheerful when drunk, asked, draping an arm around me. Maria, a female colleague 4 years junior to me and Michael, had recently asked me out. I hadn't told anyone, yet Michael knew. Germans tend to be quite open-minded, so it wouldn't be surprising if Maria had talked about it herself. Oh, I turned her down politely. It'd be difficult to start something with me returning to the US, and I told her she deserves someone better. Hearing this, Michael sighed. Man, that's a shame. Maria's the office beauty, hardworking and a great girl. I'd date her in a heartbeat. Well, she's too good for me, honestly. As I laughed, Michael turned serious for a moment. Wonder what kind of wonderful person you'll end up with, Tom. Yeah, I guess so.
Make sure you tell me when that happens.
Of course. Honestly, I couldn't even picture myself in a relationship. I was beginning to think maybe I'd end up living alone my whole life. But hearing Michael say that made me really happy. I hope such a future comes someday. I thought, if only a little. And so, I returned to the headquarters in the US after 3 years.
This is Tom Jackson, who will be working with us from today.
The department head, Jane Smith, introduced me in a very brief manner. I'm Tom Jackson. I've worked here for 6 years since my fresh graduate days, and I was in the Germany branch for 3 years. There might be some areas where I lack, but I look forward to working with you. After I introduced myself, everyone in the office applauded. I was in a newly established department, different from before I went to Germany, so most faces were unfamiliar. Except for Jane Smith, the department head.
The seat's over there.
She said after the morning assembly, pointing somewhere in the distance. Obviously, over there wasn't enough for me to go on, so when I asked for more details, she coldly brushed me off with, "It's where nothing's placed, obviously. Can't you figure that out?" So I found a likely spot on my own and settled in. Phew, I'm worried about the future. Back at the headquarters seat after a long while, I felt both nostalgia and anxiety as I reminisced about the past. Actually, Jane Smith, the cold female boss from earlier, and I joined the company in the same year. That year, there were only 2 of us as new employees, so we often went out for drinks to share information and occasionally vent our frustrations. It didn't take long for us to become irreplaceable to each other. In the summer of our second year as working adults, when we were 24, Jane and I started dating. We kept it a secret within the company to not affect our work, but since we worked on the same projects, we understood each other's work struggles and business well. Being colleagues and friends from the start, our relationship felt very comfortable, and we eventually started thinking about marriage. However, one day when I was 27, I had been offered a transfer to the Germany branch from the upper management. It was a decision left up to me, given it was an overseas transfer, but my mind was already made up. It's the chance I've always wanted. I want to go to Germany. This company had overseas branches before I joined, and despite its headquarters being in the US, the experience at the economically central Germany branch was something everyone aspired to. Of course, not everyone who wished could go. Only a select few recognized by the upper management were offered such opportunities. I never assumed I'd be chosen, but I worked my hardest towards that goal. I was overjoyed that my efforts seemed to have paid off. That's why I think I was too carried away at the time. I was so focused on my own happiness that I failed to consider the feelings of the most important person to me. After work that day, I called Jane, who was my girlfriend at the time. Back then, I used to call her by her first name, Jane, to our usual pub we frequented, even before we started dating. I was completely elated. I drank eagerly, exploding with joy to Jane. And so, I was so happy, I answered on the spot. Probably heading to Germany in 2 months. I'm just so excited. I wonder if my German will be good enough. Jane didn't change her expression at all, while I talked excitedly. It's hard to describe. Not joy, anger, sorrow, or pleasure, but more like she was completely stunned. I had never doubted that what made me happy would also make Jane happy, so I couldn't understand why she had such an expression. Maybe she's just shocked because it's so sudden. That was all I thought, still not considering anything but myself, happily talking about life in Germany. And the reason I wasn't nervous about my first move abroad was that I had assumed Jane will go to Germany with me. Since we were already thinking about marriage, it was natural for me to imagine such a plan in my head, never considering a scenario where we'd be apart. But at that moment, I forgot something simple: to put feelings. However, what stopped my buoyant chatter was Jane's voice, tinged with anger.
How can you say that with a smile?
I never imagined I'd be reprimanded, and seeing Jane's face shocked me. even more because tears were overflowing from her eyes. What do you mean? Before I could finish my bewildered question, Jane continued with an even stronger tone.
What do you think of me? Going to Germany. Why are you so happy to say that? You've only thought about yourself. You didn't care about me at all, did you? I was a fool to trust you. Just go by yourself if you like. Goodbye.
Just after saying that, she roughly placed money on the table and left the restaurant. Of course, I chased after her, but I lost sight of her while paying the bill, and she didn't respond to any calls or visits to her house. We still saw each other at work, but couldn't discuss anything personal, and any attempt I made to speak to her outside of work-related matters was ignored. My messages didn't even get read, so I was probably blocked. Honestly, I didn't understand why Jane was so angry. But one thing I understood from her was that she felt terribly hurt because I had only thought of myself. I wanted you to come to Germany with me. I never said, leading to the misunderstanding that I wanted to break up and leave the US alone, or maybe she was angry. I decided to move without consulting her. I was wrong to assume that dating meant we would get married or move to Germany together. But even though I wanted to apologize, I was told to never talk to me again. I realized the trust I had lost could not be regained. We ended up separating in a situation where it wasn't clear who dumped whom. So, it makes sense that she would be cold to me after returning to the US 3 years later. Moreover, she seems to still be single, and while she is serious and competent at her work, her relationship with colleagues seems poor, with rumors saying she gave up on being a woman to live for her work, and acts high and mighty because she can do her job. The Jane I knew was kind, hard-working, bright, and not the type to be disliked by colleagues. Maybe she became reckless because of what happened between us. I know it sounds self-centered, but I couldn't help feeling responsible. So, no matter how coldly she treated me or how unreasonable the work she assigned was, I never complained. Jane would assign an impossible amount of work as if to spite me or insult and mock me.
You couldn't even handle that much. What were you doing in Germany? Just playing around for 3 years. How lucky you are. How does it feel to be subordinate to your former peer? Being sent back to the US after 3 years shows just how useless you were.
Such words became a daily occurrence, and it seemed she wanted to label me as the guy who can't do his job. Her task assignments were clearly meant to harass, but I was not just playing around in Germany. I was confident I could do satisfactory work if I seriously faced it. If she wanted to see me as the guy who can't do his job, then I was willing to be seen that way. Right or wrong, I didn't see any other way to atone. But my feelings were unknown to Jane or any other colleagues. I, myself, became the subject of bad rumors. He worked in Germany branch, but can't do his job at all. To think such a useless guy could go to Germany, what a letdown. It's not surprising. This is how I started to feel out of place at the headquarters in the US. Remembering the time spent with my colleagues in Germany makes my current situation feel truly painful. But it's my fault Jane isn't happy. It might be self-centered, but seeing her now makes me feel that way. And yet, I don't deserve to live happily and smile. At some point, that's how I started to feel. Then, one day,
Oh, Jackson.
walking down the hallway after a break, I heard a familiar voice. Johnson. There stood Johnson, my direct boss before I went to Germany 3 years ago. He was a department head at the time, but had since been promoted and was now an executive. We hadn't had a chance to interact directly since my return, and this was the first time I had seen him.
I heard you'd come back, but I'm glad we finally met. How are you doing?
Johnson was one of the people I respected the most, having been very kind to me since I joined the company. I had always wanted to meet him, and I was very happy, but I couldn't exactly say I was doing well. I didn't want to complain during our first meeting in a long time, nor did I want to lie. Caught in my hesitation, Johnson cheerfully suggested,
Tomorrow's Friday. How about we catch up over dinner?
Really, I'd love to. Please, let's do it. For the first time since returning to the US, I felt like I had something to look forward to. After work the next day, I went out to drink with Johnson. Coincidentally, we ended up at the same place where Jane and I had parted ways 3 years ago. We talked mostly about time in Germany, which brightened my spirits and reminded me of happier times. He also shared news of his child being born during the last 3 years, and time flew by as we caught up. When our conversation dwindled, Johnson grew serious.
Even though I couldn't see your face, rumors reach me since we're in the same company. What happened to you? This isn't like you, especially between you and Jane. What exactly happened?
He might have invited me out because he sensed something was wrong. Feeling it rude to dodge the question, I decided to tell him everything. Since I had even kept my relationship with Jane a secret from Johnson, I expected him to be surprised. But
How many years do you think I've been your boss? I knew you two were dating all along.
his words caught me off guard. However, he seemed unaware of our breakup and was shocked by the current state of our relationship, given how close we were as colleagues and lovers. But all this is my fault. She is not to blame. I only thought about myself and ended up changing her life. It's only natural she resents me. The seeds I sowed mean I can only accept whatever comes my way as atonement. After hearing my story, Johnson said,
Do you really think that's what's best for both of you?
"What?" His unexpected question left me at a loss for words. He continued,
Do you truly believe that's the best you can do? By atoning this way, do you think it's right to keep her painted as a bad woman? To me, it looks like you're afraid of rejection and are running away from facing the issue.
I was taken aback. I had been so sure that this was the only way to atone, but I hadn't considered if there were other things I should do instead.
There are rumors in the company, and there's talk of reassessing Chain's position as a manager. If you continue like this, you'll waste your 3 years in Germany. Your actions now are leading to mutual destruction with her. Think seriously about what you should really do, what can truly make her happy. Face a problem, don't run from it.
He was right. I've been helped by Johnson countless times since I was a new graduate, but it seems I'm utterly hopeless when it comes to Jane. I felt deeply ashamed. Johnson, thank you. I was wrong. I won't run away anymore. When I said that, Johnson sighed and then smiled.
That's more like it, Jackson. You have the attitude to face your mistakes, and that's what I like about you. Now, face Jane properly.
His words further motivated me. Then, on the next workday, 2 hours before leaving, Jane came to my desk.
Finish summarizing this within 2 hours before the end of the day. If you can't handle this, you know what will happen, right? If I report your work performance in the next internal review, you're probably getting fired. Or maybe, at best, you'll be sent to some backwater.
Saying that, she dumped a file full of transaction documents with associated companies onto my desk. Normally, summarizing this amount of documents wouldn't be possible in 2 hours, but she coldly smirked and issued the challenge. But I was done with such fruitless exchanges. Understood. Just a moment. There, done.
What?
Usually, even if I had already finished the work Shane requested, I would submit it right at the deadline or slightly later, using the spare time to organize documents or help colleagues, making the work environment more manageable. I had been pretending to be inefficient in front of Jane, but no more running away. I thought these documents might need organizing someday, so I prepped them in advance. I think it should be fine. I've just sent the compiled data to the shared file, so please check it.
What? What did you do on your own?
I've summarized the requested range and also listed information on rival companies' associated businesses.
What?
Jane was visibly surprised by the unexpected turn.
You must be messing around. Don't underestimate me.
Initially, that's what she said, but after returning to her desk and briefly checking, she didn't find fault with the work. However, after everyone started leaving at the end of the day, she called me into a meeting room saying, "Jackson, a moment."
What's the meaning of earlier? Was that some kind of jab at me? I don't know when you prepared such documents, but if you can actually do it, why not always work seriously? You've been mocking me all this time, haven't you?
Her face flushed with anger. She seemed to have tears in her eyes. My heart ached because I realized she had been suffering all this time. I'm sorry for not facing you properly. I never truly considered your feelings, always focusing on myself. Ever since we parted ways before I went to Germany, I've been filled with regret. She seemed surprised to hear such a confession out of the blue, then quickly turned her face away.
What are you trying to do bringing this up now? Can we not talk about this anymore?
It was indeed too late. Why didn't I try everything in my power to face this sooner? My lack of action tormented me. When my transfer to Germany was decided, I was just overjoyed. I had always dreamed of this, and it becoming a reality made me so happy. But I never achieved that dream because, in reality, my dream was to go to Germany with you.
What?
Jane looked at me, her eyes wide with shock. I'm sorry. I was an idiot. I just assumed you'd come to Germany with me because we were dating, without considering it was a huge decision for you. It was a decision that required a significant commitment from you. Yet, I never expressed it in words hurt you, and was too afraid of getting hurt myself to share my feelings. I should have had a proper discussion with you. I was scared of rejection and just went to Germany. And after returning to the US, I've avoided facing you and the reality to the fullest. I tried to be what you wanted, thinking that by doing so, I was atoning for my sins. It's foolish. That wouldn't make you happy. What I really should have done was to face you and listen to your feelings. Throughout my confession, Jane kept her gaze averted, quietly sobbing. Is she crying? Jane. As I tried to get a closer look, she turned away from me and she said in a tearful voice, "Why bring this up now?" I thought, that's why it's been so hard to even look at you. She must have been suffering more from pushing me away. Knowing her kind nature, I realized she must have loathed herself for treating others harshly over these 3 years.
If you had just said, let's go to Germany together, none of this would have happened, idiot.
That sentence held everything. Her cold demeanor and work-first attitude were just ways to distract herself from her pain. I should have faced this sooner. No matter how much I think about it, I can't go back in time. But there are countless things I can do now. Despite various emotions interfering, I voiced my thoughts candidly. I might not be in the position to say this, pretending not to notice, and maybe I won't be forgiven, but I'm truly sorry. I'll be honest with you. I love you. Whether it was going to Germany or anywhere else, I couldn't forget about you. I don't care how much you scold me. If you hate me, that's okay. If you don't want to see my face, I'll leave the company and disappear from your life. I just want you to be happy. You deserve happiness. Your happiness is my happiness. That's right. Even if I made new friends in Germany or received affection from wonderful women, my heart never changed. I couldn't imagine a future without Jane by my side. Saying this now might make me look foolish. No, I'm definitely going to be scorned. But if by some miracle we could start over together, I wouldn't make the same mistake. And Jane's response was,
After all the horrible things I did to you out of spite, why would you say that to me? I never really forgot about you either.
Then, both of us cried more than any adult should, talking about everything that had gone wrong between us. It might be difficult to return to how we were 3 years ago, but this time, I don't want to make any mistakes. I want to gradually regain the trust of our colleagues and make up for the 3 years we were apart by making her smile, by making her happy. And someday, I'd like to go to Germany together and introduce her to Michael.
At the party celebrating the new president's inauguration, I couldn't find my place card. As I was hanging around in trouble, Johnson, the department head, came over with a smirk and approached me.
Hey, what are you looking for?
I didn't want to admit it to Johnson, but reluctantly said, I can't find my seat. Then, Johnson pointed to the foot of the chair with the luggage placed near the wall. There, my place card was tossed down as if thrown away.
Your chair was used for the luggage area. There's no seat for a high school grad.
That's what this is about. Johnson had deliberately moved the chair supposed to be mine to the edge, piled some unidentifiable luggage on it, and placed the seating chart under the chair.
Someone without a seat wandering around is in the way. Get away now.
I decided to just listen to what Johnson said. Then I'm leaving. but if you run into trouble later, it's none of my business." Right after, the chairman appeared and asked, "Where is the president's son?" "My name is Alex Miller, 30 years old. I'm part of the hotel division at a major electronics manufacturer, Smith Electronics. The hotel division, as the name suggests, handles the electrical appliances associated with hotels. This involves introducing new products, replacing or maintaining ones that have been in use for a while. It's a busy department, but more interesting than just selling consumer electronics. One day, our division head was transferred abroad, and a new boss who had been the sales director at a subsidiary took his place. The new department head, Johnson, was known for his overwhelming sales ability. We, the hotel division team, were looking forward to his arrival.
From today, I'm counting on you all. With me here, let's increase our sales, outstrip other manufacturers by a mile, and become the top in sales in the hotel industry. I want you all to put your backs into it."
The new department head gave us a very encouraging welcome speech. "All right, let's do this." I was motivated. However, that was only at the beginning. The first thing Johnson did as the new sales director was to conduct a background check on the employees. Not just sales performance, but also educational background, family structure, and career history were all scrutinized. The purpose of this wasn't clear, but that's Johnson's explanation.
By understanding what kind of person each employee is, we can find a sales style that suits them the best. In this way, each person's performance improves, and so does the department's overall performance.
The previous director did pay close attention to the employees' characters and evaluated them accordingly, but never went as far as to scrutinize prospective employees like that. It seems the approach varies from person to person. Johnson carefully talked to each employee, discussing their responsibilities and various strategies, as he said he would. Then, it was finally my turn for the interview. When Johnson called me, I responded to the other employees' words of encouragement with a clenched fist and headed to the director's office. I knocked on the door of the director's office 3 times and entered after hearing "Come in." It felt like I was taking a job interview, which making me nervous. This feels nostalgic, but I wish I didn't have to go through this again. I was both excited and anxious. As I entered the director's office and waited for Johnson to speak, he looked me up and down from his seat and suddenly asked,
"You have high school as your last education. Is this true?"
"Due to certain circumstances, it's true that I only graduated from high school. I had no intention of hiding it, nor could I lie about it." After I honestly admitted it, Johnson sighed heavily and said, "How did someone with just a high school education get into this company?" As if it was a huge disappointment.
"I don't need a bottom-rung man like a high school grad as you in my team. Remember, if you mess up, you're out of here immediately,"
he declared. Although I was shocked by Johnson's declaration, I never thought it would go beyond that. I figured as long as I kept up my sales performance, there wouldn't be any complaints. After all, that was the only way I could have. Being a high school grad is an unchangeable fact, but it had never been a problem before. So I continued working as usual, but it seemed naive thinking.
"Miller, what's going on here?
Is there a problem?"
Is there a problem, you ask?"
Johnson slammed the documents he was holding onto the desk loudly.
What's with the sales at this lakeside hotel you're managing?
So that's what this is about. Lakeside Hotel was mainly catering to budget inbound tourists from abroad. As you well knew, due to the global situation, its financial health deteriorated, leading to a temporary closure until a new owner took over and it could resume operations. Even after reopening, there wasn't enough budget to upgrade the electronics, so it's barely managing to continue business with minimal maintenance and essential replacements. However, with the recent revival of inbound tourism, the business has been gradually improving, and it was expected to return to its former state soon. I explained this to Johnson, but he wouldn't accept it, scolding me as if it was my fault. Then he declared,
Stop making excuses. This is why I hate dealing with bottom-of-the-barrel high school grads. Listen, if you can't recover Lakeside Hotel's figures by the end of this month, you're paying a fine.
Our company did not have such a fine system. Some colleagues tried to intervene, saying so, but Johnson wouldn't hear of it.
We, elite college graduates like me and you guys, might not need it, but someone hopeless like Miller needs this kind of discipline.
He emphasized again to me.
Got it? By the end of this month. Make sure you recover those numbers.
In the end, the situation didn't improve immediately, and I actually had 10% of my salary taken as a fine that month, on top of not receiving my sales allowance. According to Johnson, an employee who made no effort in sales didn't deserve a sales allowance.
Listen, this is the new policy for this department. Those who aren't serious about their work will continuously receive this kind of tough love, especially for those too dumb to understand. We'll be strict.
That's absurd, I thought, but Johnson said this, staring straight at me. Fortunately, Johnson's love whip towards me ended with that one time. The reason was that my performance wasn't bad enough to warrant a fine. I was already among the top performers in the hotel division, and fortunately, Lakeside Hotel finally started recovering, leaving Johnson with no angle to criticize. I decided to be extra careful and prudent in my work to avoid giving Johnson any further reason to target me. Though Johnson looked at me with displeasure, he couldn't do anything if I didn't make any mistakes. If he did, he'd have to start finding the elite college graduates he praises as well. Since then, Johnson hasn't been able to do anything to me. Still, the snide remarks continued, and the "this high school grad" comments didn't decrease. But if I treated it like background music while walking down the street, I gradually started to mind it less. Humans really can adapt to anything. Just when I had managed to settle into my job, there was a change in our company's presidency. The current president stepped down to become chairman, and his son, the executive director, took over as president.
Tomorrow is an important day. Let's all do our best to make a celebration for the new president memorable.
Johnson announced to his subordinates with a broad smile. On the day, the company was taking a full day off. There's a party for the new president's inauguration at a large hotel ballroom, inviting all employees. Employees left work looking forward to tomorrow. The party started at noon. Each department has tables set up in the rented venue. My department, the hotel division, was located in the middle towards the right end from the stage. I checked the seating chart and headed towards the hotel division's table, But something was off. I couldn't find my place card. After making a full round, I noticed that everyone else's name, including Department Head Johnson's, was there, except for mine. That's strange, I thought, but my colleagues already seated could only say they hadn't noticed my name, having sat down at their assigned spots. That's possible. As I was wandering around, confused, Johnson came over with a grin, approaching me.
Hey, what are you looking for?
I didn't want to say it to Johnson, but I had no choice but to admit, I can't find my seat. Johnson then pointed to the foot of a chair used for storing luggage at the edge of the room. There, my place card was discarded as if it was trash.
Your chair was used for the luggage area. No seat for a high school grad.
So that's what this is about. Johnson had deliberately moved the chair I was supposed to sit into the side of the wall, piled some unidentifiable luggage on it, and placed the seating chart under the chair. All to exclude me from the grand seat at the new president's inauguration party.
Someone without a seat wandering around is just in the way. Get away now.
Johnson said this with a pleased laugh. What a boring thing to do. Honestly, I was more shocked by the childishness of it all than angry, but I decided to just listen to what Johnson said. Then I'm leaving, but if you run into trouble later, it's none of my business.
What? Our company won't be troubled in the slightest by the absence of a lowly high school grad like you. Just disappear from the company while you're at it.
I got it. Please don't forget those words. With that, I left the party venue. When a party started, it turned into a bit of a commotion. I'll let Johnson handle the rest. Thinking that, I took a taxi home from in front of the hotel. When I got home, I took my smartphone out of my bag. I had turned it off when I left the hotel and got into the taxi. About 30 minutes have passed since then. Let's see what's happening. As soon as I turned on my smartphone, it immediately started blinking blue, indicating several messages and voicemails were waiting. Just as I swiped the screen to check the messages, the phone rang, and I accidentally answered it. Whether it was good or bad timing, it was Johnson on the line.
Hello, Alex. It's me, Johnson, your department head. Thank goodness you finally answered. Please come back to the venue right now.
Johnson sounded almost in tears as he spoke. What could possibly be the matter? I left because you told me to.
Don't say that. Just come back. It'll be a disaster if you don't.
I don't care about that. I was just following your orders, sir. I responded coldly.
I apologize. Please, I'm begging you, come back. If not, it might be the end for me. Please.
The latter part was said through sobs and sniffles, but it was no concern of mine. I don't care. That's why I told you. Whatever happens, it's not my problem.
Don't say that.
Johnson explained that right after I left, the party started, and the chairman noticed the vacant seat in the hotel division and asked, "Where is the president's son?"
I had no idea you were the president's son and the chairman's grandson. Your name was different, and nobody told me anything about it.
And then,
if I had known, I wouldn't have said those things. Please, come back. I'm begging you, please.
over the phone, Johnson repeated the same plea over and over. Anyway, I'll tell everyone I left the party venue on Department Head Johnson's orders. Goodbye. I said mercilessly and turned off my phone again. Now, what will happen? Eventually, a car came from the venue to take me back. It wasn't because Johnson asked me to. It's because if I don't go back, my very character would be called into question. Upon returning to the venue, I was immediately escorted to my seat. This time, it's not my seat in the hotel division, but my new seat prepared on the podium. As I took my seat, the host introduced me.
Now, let me introduce you to the son of our new president, Alex. A big round of applause, please.
I was greeted with thunderous applause and took a seat next to my father, the new president, Tom Smith. My grandfather, now the chairman, was also sitting nearby. The host briefly introduced my background and announced that the hotel division of Smith Electronics would become an independent subsidiary, with me as its president. A murmur rose from the audience. Prompted by the host, I was set to give a greeting. I moved in front of the microphone and bowed to the audience. I'm Alex Miller. For reasons, I've been going by the name Miller, but as I assume the position of president at Smith Hotel Management, a subsidiary, I'll be returning to my real name, Alex Smith. I'm looking forward to working with all of you. There seemed to be a bit of confusion among some in the venue, but it was quickly filled with loud applause. Johnson was nowhere to be seen, but then again, he probably didn't have the guts to stay in the venue after that. This left 2 empty seats at the hotel division's table, but since the division will soon be phased out, I didn't see it as a major issue. In truth, I've been going by Miller at the company, but my real name is Smith. It's the same surname as my grandfather, the chairman, and my father, the new president, because we are family. This has to do with the fact that I'm a high school graduate. When I was about to graduate from high school, I fell ill and had to be hospitalized for a long time. I had already decided on a university, but due to my need for hospitalization for more than half a year, I reluctantly had to give up my admission. The hospital had a classroom for long-term hospitalized children, but I often couldn't attend due to my condition. Then I had to be tutored remotely, but with treatment and days when I was too ill to do anything but sleep, my studies didn't progress as I had hoped. Still, I loved studying and didn't want my illness to stop me, so I made as much effort as I could. As a result, I obtained my high school diploma and was able to take the college entrance exams again. And then, after I had been accepted into college, unbelievably, my illness recurred, and I had to give up on going to college once again. I became despondent, losing the will to study, and even becoming passive about my treatment. That's when my mother's acquaintance suggested that perhaps it was my name that was bringing me bad luck. Though skeptical, my mother was desperate for anything that might help. After consulting with a priest, we were told about a tradition, still found in various parts of the world, of giving children unflattering names to protect them from malevolent forces. Names related to refuse, animals, or even vulgar terms were used to deceive malevolent spirits into thinking the child was not worth taking. Once the child reached an age where they could stand up to these forces, they would be given their proper name or called by their real name. Though such practices have become less common in medically advanced America, they persist in areas with low child survival rates. America used to be like that too. Perhaps they used false names to protect children from the clutches of evil. If you're feeling that down, why not use a pseudonym until you feel somewhat better? That's what I was told. It's unclear if the name is really to blame, but after it happens twice, it's natural to become anxious about various things. It seems like a good idea to try changing things up to improve your spirits. Of course, I couldn't take on a name that was distasteful, but it was suggested that I try using my mother's maiden name for the time being. So, outwardly, I began introducing myself as Miller. My mother even asked the hospital to note both Miller and Smith on my medical records. It seems the hospital wasn't too pleased at first, but after my mother insisted, they reluctantly agreed to cooperate. At first, I honestly thought, how can anyone believe in such silly superstitions? However, human emotions are a curious thing. Seeing my mother smile and assure me that everything would definitely be okay and I would get better gradually made me feel like maybe things would indeed turn out fine. And perhaps it was because I embraced that mindset and relaxed, focusing positively on my treatment, that surprisingly, I was able to regain my health in no time at all. My mother was overjoyed, convinced that changing the surname had made all the difference. Though the true reason for my recovery remains unknown. But since my mother was happy and said so, I figured it wouldn't hurt to keep it that way for a while. So from then on, I continued to introduce myself as Miller in public. I gave up on going to college, but instead, I decided to continue studying with a certain organization. It was an organization similar to what you might call a business workshop, and after my dad found out I was studying economics on my own, he introduced me to it, suggesting I should check it out. There, I studied various things related to company management, like economics, business administration, and finance. I also learned languages, picking up English, German, Chinese, among others. And now, I've joined my grandfather's company, keeping the fact that I'm his grandson a secret. This was when I was 22, the same age as recent college graduates. Actually, it was my idea to propose the launch of the hotel division. Both my grandfather and father agreed it was a good idea and decided to create the new department at the same time I joined the company, aiming to eventually spin off this department into a subsidiary. I worked hard to build it up. Thanks to being recognized for our efforts here and there, I finally achieved my goal. After the party, I made a point to inquire about Johnson's fate. When the chairman, my grandfather, had his secretary ask why I wasn't at my seat, Johnson smoothly replied, it's the new CEO's welcome party. After all, I took this opportunity to put our department in proper order. A high school graduate is hardly necessary for the shining success of Smith Electronics. That's what he reportedly answered. Upon learning that I was the person he had referred to, my grandfather, the chairman, personally came to inquire about the president's son's whereabouts. At that point, Johnson finally realized I was his son and, in a panic, reportedly rushed to call me. Seeing Johnson desperately asking me to come back in the lobby, my grandfather's secretary realized we wouldn't make it in time for the new company's launch speech and sent a car to pick me up. Secretary told Johnson that we would have a detailed discussion another day and sent him on his way. 2 days after the party, in front of my grandfather, father, and myself 3 generations, Johnson explained why he did what he did. According to Johnson, his father was a high school graduate who hardly worked, drank all day, and when upset, would become violent towards his wife and children. Having grown up in such an environment led Johnson to harbor hatred towards high school graduates, wanting to exclude them. I feel sorry for him, considering the kind of family environment he had. However, just because someone is a high school graduate, looking down on and trying to oust them is not something a leader should do. When my grandfather and father demanded an explanation of Johnson's actions, I honestly recounted everything. There was no need to defend him, nor did I intend to. It was then revealed that Johnson had embezzled the 10% of my salary he claimed as a fine and my sales allowance. He pressured the accounting staff to create a separate payroll slip for me, facilitating this embezzlement. Although the amount was small, it constituted embezzlement. An investigation into the subsidiary where Johnson worked before coming to headquarters fortunately found no similar misconduct, likely due to the absence of high school graduates among his subordinates there. As a result, the coerced accounting employee faced a 3-month pay cut and was required to submit a letter of reflection, while Johnson was demoted and transferred to a factory in a rural area. There are many high school graduate employees in the regional factories, whom Johnson despises. The world is filled with people from various backgrounds, all working hard and living their lives. Whether someone has a high school diploma, a college degree, a graduate school graduate, is a regular employee or a part-timer, everyone contributes. The decision was made hoping Johnson would come to understand this by working alongside those he looked down upon. However, unable to tolerate working with those he had demeaned, Johnson ultimately resigned. At that time, hearing Johnson's story, I fully understood that he had his own struggles, worked hard, graduated from a top university, and joined our company, which is considered a top-tier enterprise. And I also understood that he worked tirelessly to climb up to the position of department head. But that doesn't excuse his disdain for and unfair treatment of high school graduates. This time, the target was me, an unusual circumstance given my position as the president's son, and the matter was resolved relatively mildly. Had it been another employee, and had Johnson succeeded in his plan, he might have continued his wrongful actions. Embezzling salary could have escalated, potentially causing significant financial damage to the company. While I empathize with Johnson's circumstances, I cannot condone his actions. Everyone has their struggles. Hopefully, he will realize this in his new environment. Following the announcement of the new company at Smith Electronics' President Transition Party, news about the establishment. Of course, my journey to becoming the company's CEO would be a part of that narrative. Johnson might see this news somewhere. Announcing my position as president of the newly established company as Alex Smith was a significant moment. I had told my mother that I would revert to my original name once the hotel division became independent. Still, my mother was very worried, repeatedly asking if it was really okay to let me return. But I'm no longer a child. I'm a full-fledged adult. Even if something bad were to happen, I won't just be silently taken away. I can fight for myself. Mom, think about it. I'm turning 30. Sure, I've been seriously ill twice, and there's no guarantee I won't get sick again. But isn't that true for everyone? After I explained this to her, I somehow managed to convince her. Though I didn't attend college, the time I would have spent there was filled with learning and networking in different ways. These experiences form the foundation upon which I'll build and grow the new company. Education is important, but there are many who, for various reasons, couldn't follow that path. I hope our company can be a place for those who have gained valuable experiences outside of formal education. It's not just about increasing sales and growing the company. It's about nurturing a diverse workforce. This is my goal. As I embark on this journey, I bid farewell to the name Miller, which protected me, and embrace my true identity, Alex Smith, determined to achieve my objectives.
Well then, should I wear this outfit today? Choosing clothes from my closet for today is enjoyable. And gathering various information from the morning is essential. Checking the weather forecast on the news and selecting appropriate clothing based on the weather and temperature. Of course, I also consider the occasion and the people I'll meet, depending on where I'm going. Since today's just some errands in the neighborhood, this should do. Besides, for that task, I have a pension-related matter to discuss. Could you please call Mike, the branch manager? I'm a 75-year-old pension recipient, and I have a pension account at this bank. The male bank teller sitting at the counter had a face I had never seen at this branch before.
Huh?
At the counter, there were female bank tellers lined up beside him. This branch is one of the larger ones, so there are many customers. Today, I arrived in accordance with the opening time for counter services, so it was relatively empty. Of course, I properly received a numbered ticket from the ticket machine and waited in line. Ken and I requested to speak with Mike, the branch manager. Since my voice isn't particularly loud, I consciously spoke up again, in case it didn't reach him.
Huh? Don't think you can just call me Ken so casually.
I only called him that after seeing his name tag. But what's with this attitude? I wondered, feeling puzzled. Even though I'm not an unreasonable, complaining customer, I couldn't help but wonder about this attitude.
The branch manager won't be called for something as trivial as a pension consultation.
Ken firmly refused.
The branch manager only deals with important clients directly.
Smirking, he looked down on me in my fast fashion attire.
This is a mega bank, you know. Commoners should use regional banks.
That's what Ken said with a mocking grin. If you're so proud of working here at a mega bank, how about reevaluating your customer service attitude? I thought I was calmly stating the obvious.
No, someone like you are not our customers.
Ken's face turned red as he raised his voice. It was a classic fit of rage. Do young people call this reverse rage these days? I couldn't help but be impressed by the strange way he understood the situation. So perhaps I should voluntarily cease being a customer here, I whispered to Ken.
You know, it's better to go to a local bank suitable for common folks.
He chuckled and flashed the next customer's queue number to attend to. Well then, tell the branch manager I want to close my $1 billion account, I said as I tried to leave the place. Ken stood up.
What?
My unexpected words might have seemed like a misunderstanding.
What are you talking about, half asleep?
He looked down on me, firmly believing that I was a pauper, both in attitude and physically.
Can even laugh at the joke of someone as shabby as you having $1 billion.
He said with a mocking tone, though he laughed in disbelief.
Besides, when you think about risk hedging, you wouldn't have $1 billion in a single account. If you're going to tell lies, at least make them a bit more believable.
He shrugged, seemingly relieved. It seems you're not entirely clueless about finance. The mention of risk hedging from Ken intrigued me, and I quickly turned my thoughts to craft this response amidst our verbal exchange. His ability to remain unfazed by the substantial sum of $1 billion might just work to his advantage as a bank employee.
Shelley.
The branch manager rushed over in a panic, apparently having been in the back reception room.
Did something disrespectful happen?
The branch manager's face had turned red, so I relayed Ken's words as is.
Ken, who do you think this person is?
The branch manager yelled angrily at Ken.
What?
Facing a bewildered Ken once again, the branch manager couldn't hide his embarrassment.
This person, you see, is one of our most valued customers.
It was the first time I had seen the usually calm branch manager shout.
You can't be serious. Someone dressed like this old lady?
Ken remained unfazed, in stark contrast to the branch manager.
Ken, watch your words. How dare you be disrespectful to such a tremendously important customer?
Worried that the branch manager might burst a blood vessel, I couldn't help but try to pacify the situation. Now, Morris, let's talk this out calmly, I said as I was led into the back reception room. I took a seat on the sofa, a familiar place by now.
Sorry for the rudeness.
The branch manager seemed apologetic as he sat down on the opposite sofa. As for Ken, he remained standing there, sulking. The branch manager pulled his sleeve and made him take a seat next to him. I am a private investor, involved in real estate, stocks, venture capital, and various other investments. I introduce successful business owners to the mega bank and consult with the branch manager, Mike, on loan applicant evaluations. I play an advisory role in assessing the suitability of loan applicants. Certainly, as Ken pointed out, I did not deposit $1 billion as cash funds in this branch account. But I am proud that the profit I brought to this branch would not be contained in $1 billion. Oh, I guess it wasn't just pride. Because that's how Mike explained it to Ken when he was explaining me to him.
I didn't know you were such a great person.
Ken was drooping as the branch manager lectured him. At that moment, there was a knock at the reception room door. It was a certain someone.
The chairman.
The branch manager shouted in a crazy voice. That's no wonder. John, the former president of this mega bank, had appeared.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mike. I told the deputy manager to let you through.
He was dressed casually, something unthinkable in his working life.
And please don't call me the chairman. I'm already retired from active duty, just an old man.
John laughed amusedly.
Shelly, thank you for the opportunity.
He shook my hand. The branch manager and Ken, who had no idea what was going on, just looked at us in amazement. I wonder if I look that shabby. I like this fashion. I asked John, who is wearing fast fashion from the same manufacturer as me.
No, I think you look youthful. By the way, who said anything about shabby?
John frowned as he said this. Ken here. I glanced at Ken, and he jumped up with a jerk of his shoulders.
I love our matching outfits, but do I look shabby?
John walked up to Ken and asked.
No, not at all.
Ken's voice was shaking. Can't we just leave the nastiness at that? I winked at John, and he laughed in an exhilarated voice. John is the same as ever. It was the same mischievous smile he had had since he was a child. I smiled at him, thinking that no matter how great he became, no matter how much he was admired by those around him, he still retained his boyish spirit.
John, what kind of relationship do you two have?
It's a fact that I had kept secret even from the branch manager, whom I have known for many years. But John, the former president of the company, and I have known each other since childhood. What I am trying to hide is the fact that I did what he asked me to do this time. The story goes back to 2 weeks ago. He contacted me, and as soon as we met, he asked me for some advice. I have a favor to ask you. Will you be my spy? He asked me. He was making a mysterious offer with a mysterious expression on his face. He was not hiding his excitement like a mischievous child. What is it? What kind of story? As I said, I, too, have a hidden curiosity that is just as strong as John. We are now 15 years past our second bad boy period, you might say.
There is a problem in our bank. His name is Ken, and I want you to spy on him to see if he really qualifies as bank employee.
Thus began the spy mission that John and I were on. Ken is the son of the president of a well-known company, a longtime acquaintance of John.
That company has made our bank their main bank.
I guess he was in a position where he could not make a statement that would condone the hiring of a connected person. But well, in layman's terms, it was a nepotistic hiring. Ken himself was not told that his father had talked to the bank president, and he believed that he was hired on his own performance. No, in fact, he graduated from a top university and got excellent grades in college. He was also studying to be a banker. He might have been hired even without connections. However, even after he joined the bank, his cocky attitude was unmistakable. At the branch he was previously at, he apparently caused trouble by not following the instructions of the branch manager to whom he was assigned. So he was transferred to a branch with a good reputation for employee training.
But it was hard to believe that employees who had completed their initial training at the school would be so arrogant to customers.
John apparently thought it was not fair to rely solely on the opinion of his former supervisor, who was critical of Ken. In the unlikely event that a disciplinary action needs to be taken, the decision cannot be made by accepting only the arguments of one side or the other. John must have thought that he also had a responsibility for having meddled in the hiring process. Therefore, he decided to use me as a test subject to make a decision by having me do the window work. In order not to inconvenience other customers, today was the day when Ken was assigned to this branch and started working as a teller.
I was also watching the earlier exchange on the waiting couch in disguise, wearing a hat, mask, and glasses.
John's revelation surprised both the branch manager and Ken.
I don't think they realized I was among the customers.
Again, he laughed loudly. Thus, I finished explaining to the branch manager and Ken our relationship as childhood friends, and that it was an aptitude test as bank employees. However, there was one thing that John did not reveal. He did not reveal the fact that he had been nepothetically hired. What Ken should have reflected on was that he did not have the slightest spirit of the customer is God. In customer service, the most important thing is to pay respect to the customers you deal with. This should have been drilled into him during his initial training, but Ken must have consciously covered his ears because he felt it went against his own policy. He was also hindered by his preconceived notions that pensioners are poor and that rich people should not be dressed in fast fashion all over. Ken probably never had any financial hardships, thanks to his father, who is a director and president of a well-known company. He seems to have been brought up in a privileged environment from an early age, and has a strong sense of being an elected official. He is said to wear a high-brand suit on a regular basis, even more so than the average one worn by bank employees. The watch he wears now is a very expensive one, the price of which would buy a luxury car.
To you, who are more interested in high-brand products, it may indeed look shabby.
John picked up the t-shirt he was wearing. Don't be rude. It's from an apparel company I'm invested in. We, who had happily taken on Operation Spy, were dressed in matching t-shirts and chinos. This morning, I informed John, you should wear that outfit I gave you as a gift. It is an up-and-coming apparel manufacturer that offers low-price products and has been gaining momentum recently. It has been getting a lot of media coverage. Even though it is a fast fashion brand, I think the design and quality are not that bad. That's why I invest in them, but well, you can't deny that they're not as good as brand name products.
I'm sorry, I like it too.
John scratched his head and apologized.
I am very sorry. It was my lack of education.
The branch manager apologized flatly, but it couldn't be helped, since there would have been no way to educate him if it was only his first day on the job.
No, I knew it was an odd time for the move, but there was nothing in the handover documents.
So the branch manager was not informed that Ken was a person of note. I was curious to know what he meant, so I asked him.
I knew it.
John nodded as if he alone was convinced. Apparently, the trouble that caused Ken's reassignment was known only to upper management within the bank.
I thought the branch manager would lead Ken to the straight and narrow.
It seems that John, who was consulted by the current executive, took the lead at his own discretion. However, he left the preparation of handover materials to Ken's former boss. This also seems to have been an action based on John's policy of not trusting only what one side says. Was it really only one-sidedly Ken's fault that the trouble occurred? There were still doubts about the supervisor that he had harbored for some time, so it was also a major spy operation to find out.
I guess they deliberately did not communicate Ken's bad reputation and the cause of the trouble, to lower the branch manager's reputation and to gain an advantage in the race for promotion.
It seems that Ken's former boss was also a very devious type.
I'm sorry, too. I was caught up in appearances and behaved rudely.
Ken looked remorseful.
What does it matter what customer looks like? No matter what our customers are wearing, we must be sincere with them.
The branch manager had a point. If he learned from the ground up under this boss, it might be possible to retrain Ken. This gave me hope.
Thank you for your patience. The number 32. Please come to this counter.
When I visited the bank again later that day, I was greeted by Ken's fresh smile.
Shelley, I apologize for the trouble I caused you the other day.
I hurriedly stopped Ken as he got up from his seat. I came here today to consult with you, Ken. When I told him so, he looked surprised. In fact, I asked John about it after we finished spying on him. He said, even though you were hired because of your nepotistic background, wouldn't you have been given a shot without any retraining? John defended Ken. Ken has the talent of a banker. He is studying finance diligently and has a lot of knowledge for a young man. All he needs now is to have his personality knocked back into shape, he said. I thought that if John had such high expectations of him that he was willing to show him mercy, he might have a chance to become a great banker. After all, he has a sharp and personable branch manager by his side. He may be a gem in the rough that will shine if he is polished and free from the mud of preconceived notions and prejudice. I thought it might not be a bad idea to invest in his future, and smiled at him.
Someone like you, who grew up in a single-parent household and poor, is naturally at the very end of the line. Typically, isn't it a bit narrow-minded for someone who's mostly idle to be unable to wait for just about 4 hours or so?
I had some errands to run at the bank, and there, I ran into a former classmate who had always looked down on me. What's more, the teller at the bank today was that very ex-classmate, despite having taken my number ticket. My number was skipped over. I asked him repeatedly when my turn would be, but he kept dodging the question, and in the end, I wasn't called until 4 hours later. I couldn't resist making a phone call due to my inability to wait any longer. And my ex-classmate didn't know who received it, and after that, he went through hell. My name is Kyle Johnson. I was raised in what you'd call a single-parent family, just me and my mom. The reason our family became a single-parent household was that my dad passed away due to an illness when I was in preschool. My mom, who had been a stay-at-home mom until then, took a job to make our lives and to raise me, turning into quite the career woman. I wanted to help out with our finances too, but as an elementary school kid, there wasn't much I could do. So I thought I'd help out with household chores instead. I'll do the cooking and laundry. I said to my mom, and I'll never forget the look on her face at the time. Hey, what's this little one talking about? Her eyes seemed to say. At first, she said no, claiming it was too dangerous because of the fire and knives. But after I insisted on doing it anyway, she finally gave in, and I was allowed to take on the household chores. But of course, there was no way a kid in elementary school could handle all the chores, and my mom knew that too. So, I started with bathroom cleaning and other chores like that. and when it came to cooking or using knives and fire, I always helped accompanied by my mom. The deal was that I would never do those things alone while I was in elementary school. As time went by, I gradually learned to cook, and by the time I entered middle school, I was finally allowed to cook on my own, truly taking on all the household chores. But I deeply felt the difficulty of housework. I have memories of respecting the people who do this chores every day. Even as a child, growing up like this, I didn't play with friends much after school. I wanted to help my mom more than I wanted to play, so I often declined invitations, leading to somewhat of an isolation in my class. Especially, a classmate back then, Ken Morrison, always ridiculed me.
Kyle, my mommy told me you're from a single-parent family, ho.
Yay, that's right. Single-parent families never lead to a good life, my mommy said. He said smugly. So I told him, you should stop calling her mommy. We're in elementary school, you know. That got Ken all riled up. From then on, Ken started to pick on me even more. If I was using a short pencil, he'd say, because you're from a single-parent family, you can't even get a new pencil, huh? And if my sweater was slightly unraveled, hey, can't afford a new one. Even though my pencil was short length, it was still usable, and my sweater just had a bit of yarn sticking out because it got caught on something. Nonetheless, finding such minor things, Ken had been mocking me, saying it's because I come from a single-parent household. I would respond with it's still usable, or it's just a little unraveled, but I'd just get laughed off with yeah, because you're poor from that single-parent household. It felt like Ken had just learned the phrase single-parent family and wanted to say it just for the sake of saying it. And Ken's attitude didn't change even in middle school, greeting me in the hallways with, hey, single-parent Kyle. By then, I had started to ignore him. It was too much trouble to engage. Instead, someone else stood up for me, yelling, Ken, enough is enough. That was one of my classmates, Hannah Rivera. I met Hannah when I was pondering over what to make for dinner tonight, while picking out groceries at the supermarket, and she happened to be shopping there too. In my shopping basket were lots of vegetables and other ingredients, while Hannah was there just to buy snacks.
Running errands. You're on top of things, huh?
No, I'm thinking of what to make for dinner tonight and maybe meal prep.
Meal prep?
She seemed to have never even heard of it, and her robotic way of speaking made me laugh. It's just my mom and me at home. She's always busy with work, so I do all the household chores.
Wow. So you cook too?
Of course.
Kyle, you're amazing. I don't do anything.
Well, I think that's normal. We're still in middle school, after all. Laughing at that, Hannah gave me a wry smile, not sure how to react. I'm used to responses like that, so I added, well, I do it because I like it. After that, Hannah started to look out for me more, saying things like, Kyle, I've recently started studying cooking too. And when Ken would bother me, she'd stand up for me even more fiercely, saying, even if Kyle comes from a single-parent family, he's working hard. I don't want to hear such things from someone like you. If you have a complaint, try working harder than Kyle before you say anything. Every time, I would thank Hannah because I didn't want to neglect my studies and give anyone a chance to say her mother didn't raise him right. I tried my best to do well in school too. Whenever I didn't understand something, I would ask people, classmates, or teachers for help. Living like this, 3 years flew by, and graduation came. Hannah called me aside and confessed something I never expected. Having watched you up close, working hard on cooking, studying, and cleaning, I thought you were an incredible person. And so I've come to like you, Kyle, for all that hard work. Would you go out with me? I've always liked you too, Hannah. You always stood up for me and helped me. Please, let's be together." I responded honestly, and we became a couple. Years passed since our middle school graduation, and now in my 30s, I had some business at my main bank, Edgewood Bank. Just for the record, my number was 36, and the current number being called at the counter was 33. Just about 3 more people to go. I thought I'd be called soon, so I decided to sit and wait. And then an hour of waiting was about to pass. I thought it was odd that the person with number 35 was taking an unusually long time. But then again, it's a bank dealing with money matters, so it seemed understandable that it might take some time. During the wait, I worked on my laptop, replying to work emails, playing games on my smartphone, checking social media, watching videos to pass the time. Finally, the person with number 35 left the counter. Oh, finally my turn. I tucked away my phone and held onto my number tag, ready to be called at any moment, when unexpectedly, the following announcement came on. "We will be serving out of turn. Number 37, please come forward." To my surprise, the call screen also displayed number 37. Huh? I was taken aback, watching as the person with number 37 went to the counter. Maybe he or she was in a hurry. That could explain why he or she asked to be called ahead. Yep, sounds about right. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense to skip numbers. Trying to convince myself, I sit back down. However, there was one thing worrying me. When I picked up my number tag, I noticed the name of today's teller was Ken Morrison written on it. Seeing the name, I remembered a former classmate with that name, and glancing at the teller's face, it was indeed him. I almost called out Ken. In surprise, I hadn't seen Ken since graduating from middle school, but he looked much like he did back then. He ended up working at this bank. I also didn't expect to be at this branch. That aside, Ken was the one who used to constantly call me the son from a single-parent family. Thinking he might start up again if he recognized me, I quietly moved away, hoping to avoid eye contact. When it was my turn at the counter, I hoped to finish without any unnecessary comments. I couldn't believe he was still harassing me even at this point. But then again, it's been years since we graduated, and this was his workplace after all. It seemed unlikely he'd do such a thing at work. Yet, I still hadn't been called. Next, number 38 was called. Ken looked calm, as if nothing was out of the ordinary, continuing his work. Maybe I'll be called next, I thought, pulling out my smartphone again. But I wasn't called. My number, 36, hadn't been called. The counter was now displaying number 60. Of course, I went to the counter to ask, "Excuse me, I'm number 36, but I haven't been called yet." I tried speaking to Ken, the teller, but without even looking up. He just said, "Yes, you'll be called soon. We're serving out of turn." But the next to be called is number 45, and I'm 36. "Yes, number 45, please come to the counter." My plea was elegantly ignored. I honestly wondered if this was acceptable behavior for a bank teller. Thinking maybe Ken was the problem, I approached another attendant and mentioned my number had been skipped, but all I got was "Please wait, or I'll let the teller know." I couldn't help but deliver a punchline. No one else seemed to be going to address this. Please forgive my inner snark. By this point, I had been at the bank for nearly 2 hours. Now, it seemed all I could do was wait, ready to be called at any moment. So, I settled in to wait once more, working on my laptop while keeping an eye on the counter. As the bank's closing time of 3 p.m. approached, I had been at Edgewood Bank for about 4 hours. Eventually, without my number ever being called, I heard the rattling sound of things being put away. When I looked toward the counter, to my surprise, they were starting to clean up. Hey. I couldn't help but raise my voice in shock, hurriedly packing up my laptop and rushing to the counter where Ken was. Hey. I haven't been called yet. When I showed Ken my number tag, he snorted with laughter. Oh, is that so? I had planned to call a poor folk from a single-parent household at the very last, but I completely forgot. He chuckled. So, he knew it was me and did this on purpose. I was really ticked off and retorted, "You said you'd call me next when I asked you several times." But he just said back to me, "I said I thought I could call you next, not that I would."
Kyle, someone like you, who grew up in a single-parent household and poor, is naturally at the very end of the line. This time ain't gonna be no big deal anyway, right? It's just a matter of waiting, so chill. Besides, isn't it a bit narrow-minded be unable to wait for just about 4 hours or so? The bank isn't running on charity, you know.
I was stunned by Ken's audacity, knowing it was me, and just because my family is a single-parent household. He assumed we were poor, made me wait 4 hours without an apology. And now, he's saying I'm narrow-minded for not being able to wait. I've made up my mind. Fine, that's enough. I'll take care of you now if you want. But it's past 3 o'clock, so you'll need to come back tomorrow or later. Ken said, laughing as if he found the whole situation hilarious. Disappointed in Edgewood Bank for allowing someone like him to be a teller, I left without saying another word and made a phone call. The next day, the branch manager of Edgewood Bank was at my doorstep.
"Mr. Johnson, I sincerely apologize just like this. So could you please reconsider canceling your account with our bank?"
Sorry, but I've made up my mind.
"If you could just..."
The branch manager was quite persistent, but my mind hadn't changed. The person I had called the day before was the branch manager of the bank I visited. I had informed him that I wanted to close my account, having been their customer for many years. The branch manager nearly screamed, "Please, Mr. Johnson. Why after all these years?" He lamented, but I only replied, "After the unacceptable service I received at your counter, I can no longer trust your bank," and hung up. I don't know if the bank had discussed it internally, but that night the branch manager contacted me again, asking to speak the next morning. Then indeed, he showed up at my house. The branch manager, who seemed to have heard everything that happened yesterday, couldn't stop sweating from the moment he arrived, wiping his sweat with a tissue multiple times.
"Our teller did something unforgivable. Ken was recently transferred to our branch, so he didn't know you, Mr. Johnson. We'll fire Ken. Ken had complaints about his attitude and caused problems at his previous branch too. We'll definitely fire him. Yes, he'll be dismissed and terminated immediately today."
The branch manager launched into it like a whirlwind. "We'll make sure Ken never appears before you again. And if there's anything else we can do for you, we'll take care of it for sure. So please just don't cancel. Please. I beg you." And he was ready to start apologizing right there at the doorstep. So I decided to respond calmly. I didn't want an apology at my doorstep. It's not your fault, you weren't there. But the person responsible hasn't come to apologize, and I don't feel any sincerity.
"Then I'll make Ken come and apologize."
Normally, shouldn't he have been the first to come? Everyone saw his behavior towards me yesterday. It's unacceptable, not just as a bank employee, but as a professional.
"That is, I did tell him to accompany me."
The branch manager looked, averting my gaze. Knowing Ken, he probably said something like, "There's no way I'm apologizing to Kyle," and ran off.
Kyle.
When I turned around, there was Hannah. Hannah and I had been together since graduating from middle school, and after finishing college, we started living together.
Fairway Bank is willing to accept our entire deposit under the conditions you set. They said they're ready to proceed with the paperwork right away.
All right, thanks. So, as you hear that, sir, I'm afraid Fairway Bank is offering us a better deal for our deposits. I cannot revoke the cancellation of our account from your bank. Please proceed with a closure. With that, the branch manager finally seemed to accept defeat, his shoulders slumping as he walked away. He seemed to have aged 20 years in an instant, though it might just be because he was already graying. Acting swiftly, Hannah and I headed to Fairway Bank. I wonder if we did wrong by the branch manager of Edgewood Bank. I mused, but Hannah was firm, no way. The worst one here is Ken, but the bank itself is to blame for condoning his behavior. And Ken didn't even come to apologize. He's unbelievable, hasn't changed since middle school. Hannah was more upset about yesterday's incident and Ken than I was. I've always admired this about Hannah. She hasn't changed at all. Well, it's over with Edgewood Bank now, and we won't have to deal with them anymore. Let's just move on. Maybe you can move on, Kyle, but I can't. If I see Ken, I won't let him off. Hannah said, mockingly practicing her pinches. I wish she could be a bit more gentle. And just as we arrived at Fairway Bank, we were in for a surprise when we saw who was there. Ken. Why are you here? There stood Ken, wearing a suit that appeared somewhat dirty. Upon spotting us, he rushed over with incredible speed, shouting, Kyle, because of you.
Hey, why would someone like you, a broke person, have $50 million deposited in our bank in the first place, and now you're moving it to another bank? What the hell are you thinking?
You see, I'm moving banks because of your terrible attitude yesterday.
What? Most single-parent upbringing like yours usually ends up being poor, right? That $50 million must be dirty money anyway. How could someone like you even come by that kind of money?
It's all clean money. I run a company with Hannah now, and that's how we've earned it. Hannah, clearly annoyed by Ken's outburst, added, You wouldn't know, but our company is really taking off. It's called Helpy Bunny.
Helpy Bunny. Isn't that the home cleaning service I've seen advertised on TV commercials recently?
Yay, that's my company. In fact, Hannah and I run a company that primarily offers home cleaning services. Growing up in a single-parent household and being responsible for household chores, I was acutely aware of how challenging it could be. That's why, after graduating from college, Hannah and I started this company. The business took off, and now my bank account holds $50 million. Ken got it. Kyle isn't Pooh anymore. And it's because you looked down on Kyle and acted that way that you got fired from the bank. You're still stuck in the past, and that's why this happened to you. Hannah said, now looking down on Ken. He fell apart right there on the spot. After that, we successfully switched our main banking to Fairway Bank. The branch manager of Fairway Bank was overjoyed, welcoming us warmly. When we entered the meeting room, there was a banner saying, Welcome, Mr. Kyle Johnson. And ultimately, the CEO of Fairway Bank came to personally thank us, saying, Thank you for choosing our bank. We will follow you for life, sir. I vividly remember feeling like I was going to get burned by the vast difference in how both Edgewood Bank and Fairway Bank handled things. Though receiving a somewhat heavy statement of "we will follow you for life," I felt good about Fairway Bank and its branch, and I started to look forward to doing business with them. Actually, Ken once came to my house saying, "I apologize for everything. Please ask the branch manager to take back my firing." But I firmly replied, "It's too late for apologies now." Then, "Can you hire me at your company?" We were classmates, right? When he tried to plead further, Hannah shut him down, saying, "Too late for that, you turncoat." "Don't you dare come here again." He was chased off by her and just ran away. I've heard rumors about Ken since then. He tried to find employment at another bank, but the story of his unbelievable customer service had spread among banks, and he couldn't get hired anywhere. This led him to a self-destructive spiral of drinking. Apparently, Ken even had a fiancée, who was the daughter of a high-ranking officer at Edgewood Bank. Had they married, Ken might have made a career there, but that was no longer possible. Currently, he's said to be missing, not having returned to his hometown, despite it being a result of his own actions. I couldn't help but feel a bit of sympathy for him. Hannah and I remained busy running our company, Helpybunny, offering two types of services: an affordable Easy Access course for regular households, and a pricier luxury course with enhanced services. Considering a new course that would fall in between these two, I discussed it with Hannah.
That sounds good. Every household has different financial situations and needs.
Maybe even a custom course could work, suggested by Hannah. Seemed like a good idea, especially now that we had the financial means to explore new customer segments. We conducted surveys among our employees and on social media to gather feedback, and I stumbled upon a certain online news article titled "The Reality of Young Carers." It detailed how young carers, besides caregiving, are also burdened with household chores, leaving them no time for themselves. I hadn't considered the double burden of caregiving and housework. Despite knowing how tough just the housework was from my own childhood, but these kids known as young carers are going through so much every day, with both housework and caregiving. I remember how tough it was just doing housework every day, with no time to hang out with friends. That's when I came up. If families with young carers could use our home cleaning services, it might at least reduce their burden of housework, setting the price even lower than our Easy Access course, to the point where it could almost be considered volunteer work. Might make it more accessible for families without becoming a financial burden. I shared this idea with Hannah, wondering what she thought about such a course. I came up with this course idea. What do you think?
That sounds amazing. It fits perfectly with the current social climate, and I'm sure it'll be a hit.
With Hannah's seal of approval, I presented the idea to our employees, and the response was unanimously positive. "If we can help the young ones, count me in," said veteran employee Smith, leading the charge with encouraging words like, "For young students, studying and playing are their jobs too. They shouldn't miss out on their youth." Feeling the incredible energy from our team, I decided to go ahead and create this course. We named this service tailored for families with young carers the Helper Course and launched it as a new offering from our company. As expected, it was a massive hit, drawing requests from numerous families asking if we could ask your service. The attention it garnered even led to media interviews from TV and magazines, further increasing the demand for our company's services. To meet the growing need for our services, I found myself personally visiting clients' homes to provide cleaning services, especially since there's a significant demand for male staff services. Being on the front lines and receiving heartfelt thanks from the clients made me feel truly fulfilled and reaffirmed the value of our work. As the company continued to grow, with an increasing number of male staff joining our ranks, we experienced busy yet fulfilling days. Today, after months of nonstop work, Hannah and I managed to take a break for a hot spring vacation. Additionally, this hotel is of a decent standard, so I also had an ulterior motive of using the behavior of the employees as a reference. Always looking to absorb anything that can improve our business, we're keen on implementing the best practices we encounter. Just so you know, amidst our hectic schedule, Hannah and I get married. We had been living together since graduating from college, and while I was fully engrossed in managing the business, Hannah supported me every step of the way. We were both busy with work, so marriage was put on the back burner. The incident with Ken prompted us to finally make it official. Hannah has always been there for me since we met in middle school, defending and supporting me more fiercely than anyone else. It made me realize I couldn't let someone so special go. "Hannah, I know it's late, but shall we get married?" To which she replied with a smile, "It really is about time, but I'm happy you asked. I'll always be here to protect you, Kyle." Hannah has always protected me, and I hope to do the same for her, supporting each other along the way.
Being able to relax like this is a reward for all the hard work, isn't it?
Absolutely. Thank you for everything, Hannah.
That's my line, Kyle. Thanks for your hard work.
We appreciated each other's efforts and commitment.
It would be great if we could grow the company even more. Then fewer people would call you the poor kid from a single-parent family.
The one who said that the most is now missing in action.
It's his own doing. Where you come from doesn't determine the outcome of your efforts.
Indeed, as Hannah said, one's family background doesn't dictate their ability to achieve success. Despite not being raised in a normal family with both parents around, I managed to graduate from college, start a company, and lead it to success through my own efforts. It all comes down to personal endeavor, which I've experienced firsthand. The results of hard work will always benefit oneself. I hope to continue working hard, achieving great results alongside Hannah and our employees.